Well, he lit the fire. This was the moment that you got fired up. This is an all-out assault on coal. How do you feel about it?
I am scared to death for our country as a man who grew up poor, for people on fixed incomes, for retirees, for the poverty-stricken. What he is doing is destroying the most reliable, lowest-cost power grid that the world has ever seen. It's a human issue to me because my employees' lives are being destroyed.
Get ready, it's not done. Tonight, the fallout from a very hot and very bothered CEO who says Iraq isn't the problem, Washington is. Iraq isn't going to send our energy bills soaring, Washington is. Because coal CEO Robert Murray says eventually Iraq will die down. The EPA, though, is just getting fired up, regulating, dictating, destroying, and all of it unending, and now apparently spreading. Talk of a hike in the gasoline tax and resurrecting the carbon tax. And all this time you thought insurgents over there were the problem. Who knew bureaucratic insurgents here were and are the far bigger problem? Well, that's my take, at least. Use hashtag Cavuto to tell me yours. Now, if you don't use hashtag Cavuto, I have no idea what your views are. You might as well be sending them to hashtag O'Reilly, in which event I doubly don't care. Now to Heritage Chief Economist Steve Moore. So, Steve, what do you make of this? I mean, this is one CEO says not only am I being fingered here, but he's giving all American energy users the finger, referring to the president.
Yeah, and one of the things that I liked about what Mr. Murray said is that the people get hurt most when you raise the price of electricity and raise the price of gasoline. And it's both factors. It's the EP regulations and what's going on in Iraq. That's like a tax on poor people, and it's a regressive tax at that. And so, you know, I'm not sure which factor is more important right now, what's going on in Iraq or those EPA regulations, but they are compounding each other. And then, of course, the third wallop is what you just mentioned, the fact that Washington is now, at the time when we have gas prices already rising, talking about raising the tax on gasoline.
Yeah, let's bring in our all-stars now. Joe Piscock with us, Gary B. Smith, Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, if you think about it, this is all done by executive fiat here. Yeah. This is an executive order that will effectively hike utility bills 30%.
That's right, and the executive branch is perpetuating falsehoods about this. The EPA administrator has come out and said energy costs will go down by 8%. Well, let's look at the facts, Neil. The facts are, as the Wall Street Journal reported, in states that already have these regulations, they go up by 30%. The facts are, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says these regulations will cost hundreds of thousands of jobs. Those are the facts. I'm tired of the falsehoods.
Joe, the argument is, well, suck it up. I mean, this is the good for us if we have cleaner air and we're no longer, you know, polluting the air. All the better.
Well, I'm going to get ganged up on here. I just have a feeling. You know, when I go on the road, Mr. Cavuto, and I go driving down and there's West Virginia and I see where those old coal refineries were, and I say if there were no regulations, we would be like China. The air would be like China. You need some kind of regulation.
You don't think this goes a little too far?
It goes a little too far, yes. That's the point.
But Gary B., what I'm worried about and what I see happening is the coal industry has cleaned up its act mightily from those early West Virginia days, to Joe's point. You could argue maybe they have more room to do that, but you could also argue that, especially looking abroad, what's going on in Iraq right now, that we have that energy here. It's 40% of our utility consumption and the bills we pay. So you limit that or you put onerous costs on that. We all pay dearly for that. And at the same time, we're looking at being beholden to these thugs half a world away.
Yeah, you know, look, Joe makes a good point. There has to be a landlord, if you will, of the environment in the United States. But the fact is the EPA has been coming down way too harshly on the coal industry. And as Mr. Murray pointed out in the tape part, it's still our low-cost energy source. We could be energy independent probably just based on coal alone. And if that isn't enough, then, you know, as we talked about, we have this gas tax, which if they're just trying to replenish the highway fund, most of the gas tax goes into a giant slush fund, so even that's used inefficiently. So it just is it's a horrible energy policy that they're trying to erect here.
You know, Steve, timing is everything,
can I have one quick thing on this? Can I one just quick thing? I want to make very clear to people, we're talking about regulations on carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not a pollution. You don't get sick on breathing in carbon dioxide. You do get sick on things like carbon monoxide, sulfur, lead, and things like that. And we have significantly reduced the pollution from coal and other types of sources. By the way, the other reason that we've reduced the amount of carbon emissions over the last 5 or 10 years is because we're using more natural gas, and yet President Obama wants to put regulations on the natural gas by not building pipelines, not allowing drilling, all of these other factors that are going to make it harder for us to get a clean fuel.
You know, Kevin, I'm all for all these other energies. I really am. Wind, and, you know, everything else the president talks about. Solar, if you can find a way to make a buck off it or make us less dependent on the guys over there, fine. But all in to me means all in. You've got to be all in on all these. And it seems when it comes to traditional fossil fuels, this president is not all in.
No, they're not all, he's not all in, and they're more expensive, they're unreliable, and to address Joe and Gary, we already have a landlord. The EPA is out there. They're regulating. This is more onerous.
But what the president wants to do is make the EPA even more of a landlord. Something a relation that Joe and I could understand. He wants to make the EPA more like Tony Soprano.
Exactly, and that's outrageous. The middle class is hurting too bad at this point.
Right, Joe? I mean, we don't want a Tony Soprano.
Yeah, make a mafia reference.
Yeah, that's good. It's our people. Just live with it. I mean, if you're offended, join the club. Well, what do you think? Longer term, do you worry that this is not the time to do? Let's say, to your early environmental point, which is sound, that yes, by all means, we don't want to just destroy the air, but now is not the time. Just like it wasn't the time for John Kerry to be talking about the whales and whether, we're all, not losing sight of the environment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And don't talk about taxing gasoline. Where do they get the nerve to talk about a gasoline tax hike? How dare you in Washington?
Well, they argue that it's been 20 years.
No, but you can't. No more taxes. They got to stop. They got to start creating jobs here in America. They're just giving jobs away, staying in that beltway bubble. The audacity to talk about a gasoline tax is incomprehensible to me.
And that's what you've been saying, right, Steve? Timing is everything.
Yeah. Well, look, we've been living through this all my life. For 40 years, we've had these disruptions of oil and gas from the Middle East. We now have the first opportunity, and of our lifetimes, Neil, to become truly energy independent with oil, natural gas, and coal, and they say they don't want to do it. And we're not going to get energy independent with windmills and solar power. We only get 2% of our electricity from those sources.
Well, it is. The deal is on, and the die has been cast, and it's up to the courts to decide whether the president can actually do what he's done, but he's doing it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you very much.